want to give Sam an update here. Impact Houston will also offer some workshops. I got off the phone with Tracy Rodriguez this morning, so not only station training days, but we'll probably get one or two from Impact Houston. And we'll talk about the difference between a social entrepreneur and a business entrepreneur. So yes, there will be absolutely more trainings available.
So HCC does a great job of letting you know all that information. That website that we have there, the safecompany.com/bold-ideas, that's where we will incorporate the dates as well. So you'll have
All right, so we've got our stream up. We've got. You want to quickly introduce yourself and then get on our stream and just share the links, your contact information, if you don't mind. Sure. And then I'll jump into the first training session, and then we can have any questions after the training, right?
All right, thank you for having us here. We really appreciate HCC's partnership, the station's partnership within our first pitch competition. It really does mean a lot to us. We are going to have our first pitch competition on April 27th. It's a Saturday. Registration is now open, and registration will close on the 22nd. Those that register for the pitch competition will be notified on April 24th whether or not they made it into the competition. And the form we bold at stthom.edu, which is stthom.edu/bold, like BOLD -ideas, IDEAS. If you have any questions about the pitch competition, you can always email me which is my last name, N like Nick, EHER, S like Sam, at stthom.edu, which again is stthom.edu. And you're welcome to call me Sam, S-A-M. We will have two tracks for the pitch competition. We will have a social entrepreneurship and an entrepreneurship track. Together between the two, we will have prizes up to $20,000. We are thinking of social entrepreneurship as a way that you are innovative in your business idea, and you are giving back to someone or something in some way. So it could be like 10% of proceeds are going to an organization, to a group of people, to a community, to help the environment, something along those lines. Any questions?
All right. So thank you so much. We absolutely appreciate the work that St. Thomas is doing with this. So in the interest of time, let's go into the training session. Maybe you're still exploring your ideas. Maybe you're not sure if your idea qualifies. Maybe you're not sure about pitching it in front of people, not knowing if someone can take the idea or not, right? So all those are valid concerns. And while this first training is about how do you have those ideas? How do you generate these ideas? How can I create that Uber-like idea, right? Or the Facebook type idea? What do I need to do so I could also get on the entrepreneurship bandwagon and make truly an impact, but also make money, right? So I use this presentation really just to help people with discovery skills that I think help build an entrepreneurial mindset. I think these are not set for everybody, but I think in general, if you practice these skills, then it will help you come up with ideas that solve problem and then also in the process make money. But so this is our first training. Another one we'll have later today with our foundation board president from HCC. He'll talk about pitch presentation. What should you be really talking about when it comes to now you've got an idea, now you need to pitch it. So what would you focus on to pitch it? So for this, really focusing on the 5 discovery skills. It doesn't have to go on for 2 hours. It'll actually be very quick, and we'll try to wrap this up rather like in 30 minutes or 40 minutes. And then if you have any questions, I'll bring up the Bold Ideas Pitch Competition website, and I'll just quickly go through the criteria that are listed there. Also the other dates that are still to be announced, but I'll go through what those topics will be, and then ultimately give you the action item of by when you need to submit it, right? So whatever ideas you have. I've also had people ask, how many ideas could be pitched, and in the past, we've allowed up to 3 ideas per participant, right? So you don't have to just be stuck on one. You could pitch 3. You could pitch 1 as an individual and 2 as a group. If you've got a group that's thinking about these things, absolutely, submit it. So just heads up, the if you've got something, pitch it. You will be asked to submit. You will be invited to pitch in front of judges after the 22nd of April at St. Thomas. So you never know which idea gets the interest of our selection committee, and you never know if you get asked to come and present, and then all of a sudden you've got a project that's funded, and you've got marketing from the 2 schools, you've got access to mentors in the community, and you may actually just turn this into a business or a project that can take you further. So the competition is open to all high school students, college students, and university students. I can see that our live stream has about 10 watching right now, so heads up, this is intended for everybody, right? That is a student in the Houston area. Okay? So without further ado, let's quickly jump into the innovation thinking. So I mentioned earlier that it's the 5 discovery skills, right? So this could be practiced by someone in elementary school, right? It's just how we look at the world, right? So one of the first things that I like to talk about is, there they are, all 5 of them. We'll deep dive into each one slowly, but the skill of associating, skill of observing, of questioning, observing, experimenting, and networking. If these 5 skills we practice on a daily basis, there's no way we couldn't be entrepreneurial or innovators, right? There's no way we wouldn't be able to have the insight or the knowledge of trying to solve problems differently, right? So what is association, right? So the skill of association really, so the way this will work is we'll deep dive, we'll explain it. I'll try to give an example of someone famous saying why that matters, and then we'll even have an example, right? So the skill of association, really connecting things that are really unrelated, connecting seemingly unrelated questions, problems, or ideas from different fields. So this just means applying something that you've learned in a different subject to something else. For example, were you aware that we use the Wi-Fi very freely today? We have access to it, we use it, it's part of our daily lives. Our phones are connected to our Wi-Fi at home. The technology that developed the Wi-Fi nodes actually came from studying ants, and how ants, once one ant finds a food, right, the whole colony knows without the ant ever having to go back and telling everybody. Within a few minutes, that food source is captured by the entire colony, right? And that technology, like as important as it is today, it wasn't created by the computer science gurus, but rather folks studying, biology and animal behavior, right? The world's fastest train is shaped like a penguin, a king penguin, because they somehow are more, their beaks are more aerodynamic, they can pierce through things, and it's that awesomeness of applying something that doesn't seem related, but then it's solving that problem for another industry. How do you become, and then excuse the G on the second line, but so how do you build that knowledge database so that you can also associate things? Well, one of the simplest things you can do is just be open to learning everything that comes your way. We live in Houston, we have access to libraries, our campuses have libraries, we have so many subjects that you can just sit in, right, as a student and explore. And that's one of the other things later. But there's so many ways you can do that, but just by building your awareness, by being open and really utilizing the knowledge that's around you. And the skill of association does depend on the other skills that are mentioned, but really to build that up, you have to learn to connect things. So Steve Jobs, right, he's mentioned creativity is really connecting things, right? Others have said creativity is really problem solving, right? Really making it so innovation is really just creative problem solving. And that's true. But it's knowing how to connect these unrelated things that makes the person an innovative person. So I want you to focus on this by building your awareness. So this skill, all about building awareness. So here's a tip. Imagine that you're in someone else's shoes, right? So imagine how someone from other subjects would look at the problem from a new perspective. So if you're tackling a problem, and maybe the problem may be hunger, traffic, transportation issues, please join us. It could be anything, right? That you've got this problem, you know it. But then don't expect the experts in that field to be the problem solvers, right? What could you add differently that could solve that problem? So, I mean, in the case of traffic, do you know there are probably 30 to 40 road designs that are adopted from architect that can increase traffic flow by creating like a round intersection to creating a four-way with smart traffic lights to just not having to worry about traffic, like creating smart cars that just talk to each other. Places like India, for example, have one of the most traffic congestion, most people moving in a traffic line without causing accidents. It's known as controlled chaos. If you've ever seen a YouTube video on traffic in India, they don't have traffic lights, right? But the amount of people flowing through those intersections, it's like vast. But they don't have any accidents because there's some sort of a controlled chaos thing happening. Could we learn from that? Could we learn from ants and other places where traffic is managed differently? Maybe it's the designing of our roads or the intersections. Maybe looking at architect and coming up and thinking of ways to go into the roads and above roads. And maybe that's a solution you pitch, is looking at it as a design element and not necessarily an infrastructure element, right? So I'm just throwing that out there as a way of trying to connect two unrelated fields. But you've got to really start thinking like that to solve these problems, right? So maybe you're thinking about hunger. We've had students pitch in the past that said, you know what, I've got a fruit tree in my backyard. There's just so many apples I can eat from it, right? What if I just start to, use an Uber-like service and just say, I've got apples, come pick them up. And someone could come pick them up who wants them. Someone can sell those apples and make a living for themselves on the side, or maybe they could just be a good humanitarian and take it to the Houston Food Bank, right? I mean, that's an idea that I think connects technology, even though it's not a tech idea. It could become sort of a big tech idea just by the local community providing access to organic fruits, right? So start thinking along those lines. All right, so we'll move forward. I think here I've got a question for you, right? So the challenge here is, could you make a round watermelon fit into a square box? And I bring this example because early on in my educational, as an educator, I was told one time, as Ravi, you're trying to push, a round something into a square problem. So the intention was, Ravi, you're giving a solution that is just, it doesn't make sense to us. And I think to be innovative, I think you have to do that. I think if you were, if everything was already solved for you, then you're not really solving, right? You should be thinking about things that are, in a square box, but you're trying to put a round circle through it, or vice versa. So this was an example where, you had watermelons, which is obviously a fruit that is a rounded shape, and it's hard to transport this because they can come in different sizes. And from a logistic point of view, it's just a nightmare, right? Because you don't know how many you could comfortably fit in a car and how many you could transport. and they could roll off and cause all this nightmare. But if you were a marketer, you would think about packaging, right? You would think about how can I get this packaged in a way that's convenient for my users to move this out of their way quicker. If you were a logistics person, you would be thinking about, man, how do I get the most watermelons in this truck to transport it on a daily basis so it's consistent? How do I control that? So, this actually happened, oops, I should do it from here. This actually happened as an example where they started to grow watermelons in a confined square box, right? So it takes a lot of knowledge of farming, right, to how to grow watermelons, what ingredients does it need, the sunlight, etc., the soil, but then how do you confine it so you could start getting a sort of the same nutritional value of the watermelon, but now it's convenient from a point of a business case to transport, to make it, it actually looks cooler because it looks like bread now. So I could just cut it and give it to my kids as a slice of watermelon, right? It's thinking differently. It's not trying to ruin the watermelon for its natural properties. It still has the same thing. It just creatively produced. It still has its values, right? And if you're starting to think about organic farming in our homes, this may be a viable option. So that box there, an open source project, it would be an innovative project. So we're making something that obviously there's a problem, that it's different sizes, we can't control that. But maybe if we were to pitch that idea, that this is how I want to turn around and give watermelon sort of this property where it's always a square, so we could transport it, and we can make it available to more people, because now there's consistency, and when in logistics, if you could control that element, then you could really cut down your cost. So there's a huge business implication to this idea that requires connecting farming, also creating that box. Also, the elements you would need. It needs to be transparent for sunlight to take place, right? So there's also that knowledge that needs to be applied, and that's creative, right? Wouldn't you say? Yes? No? It is creative, right? Okay, good. So as an example. All right, so then let's talk about questioning. So the skill of association, before you could really narrow that down and start getting great at it, I think you need to start talking about questioning things. So it's not questioning things for the sake of being annoying, right? We don't want questions just because you have nothing else and you just want to make up questions. No, it's really talking to yourself and wondering, then why is it this way? And this really does feed into the next skill of observing. But really, you'll realize that when you take a minute to think about the problems you're having and start asking them to yourself and really thinking it through, I think you'll find that answers are easy. It's asking the right question that's hard, right? So solutions are dime a dozen. You could find solution people all day long. They're everywhere. But the right question people, now that's hard, right? Because they're not necessarily thinking. So I think that as a skill, we should really build up the right question mindset, thinking about it and saying, why is it this way? Could it be done differently? If so, where could I adopt another idea from and introduce it here? You live in a day and age where you have access to the entire world's history and facts and figures off Google. You also live in the age where you can build any skill by watching YouTube videos on how to do stuff, right? So it's no longer that is the limitation for you. But knowing what you want to solve for, that's your challenge, right? So the important and difficult job is never to find the right answers. It is to find the right question, right? So Peter Drucker is a business guru, or was a business guru, that mentioned that. So the tip for that really is to brainstorm questions about the problem, create a list of questions, and pick the best ones to explore further. So really just sitting down and thinking through. It's a great skill for critical thinkers. Just taking, if you're really busy in your day-to-day life, then maybe all you need to do is write down the problems at the end of the day. Just write down every issue you had in that day. Oh man, the bus was late. I was annoyed because of this. The food wasn't tasty. The food wasn't healthy for me. The gym membership was too expensive. Everything. The car didn't come on time, or the bus was super late. My Uber was late. Whatever problems you have, right? Just write them down, right? Because those are things you could personally think about and reflect on. Then don't look at it. Put it away. Build the next one. Build the third one. As many as you want, and then pick a day in the month where you just go back and look at all the problems you had over the course of weeks or days and weeks, and then look at them and see if you could find anything that's connecting them. For example, maybe the weather had an impact on the traffic and you realize that this was happening, your buses was late or something was happening because of that. Then the right question doesn't become why is traffic always a problem, but then on what days is traffic expected to be the most problem? Is it during the days of bad weather, right? So the questions start to be very different. It's not about that problem, it's things related to that problem. So if you have the right question, then you can try tackling the right question. Maybe on the days you're expecting bad weather, the solution could be letting people automatically adjust their alarms based on the weather next day. So maybe you built an app that automatically adjusts the person's alarm based on the expected weather next day, right? So far, everybody knows Google, you can set the alarm, and if it's 7 o'clock in the morning, Google hits it at 7. But if our expected commute that day, based on the weather, is going to be an added 30 minutes, maybe we should really wake up at 6:30. Can our alarms be smarter? Is there an app for that, right? And if you're a computer science student, make it, sell it for free, and reap the benefits of advertisements for the next 10 years until somebody else, until Google or them, they just integrate it, right? You see what I'm saying? You don't have to work at Google to provide these solutions. You live in the day and age where you could provide these solutions now, right? It may be that you're not a coder, you're not a programmer. Well, guess what? Thanks to iOS coding and open source books and YouTubers that are talking about how to code, and even programs at our college, right? HCC has a lot of programs where in 1 year you can learn how to code. Maybe you don't want to code. Maybe your skill is something else, but maybe the next skill eventually is about networking. Maybe you find that group that can code the idea for you. Maybe you build a company that way, right? So think about those things, but the important thing really becomes is not throwing a solution at it, but rather making sure the right questions are being asked. And obviously, you know, the 6 formats of a question, right? So what, why, when, who, where, and how. These are typical things. That's how you would start. So, observation becomes super important because in order for you to associate things and ask the right questions, you have to observe things. You can't just wake up and say, there's the answer. That's what I'm going to do. You have to first take some time. When you write your problem list out and you look at it after another day, you're giving yourself some time to observe if there's a pattern. If there's something that's not right, that can be fixed. Human minds are extremely well adapted to patterns. If there is a drop in a pattern, we will detect it. Okay, so use that to your advantage, right? Observe your world. Believe me when I say this, we as humans have only been part of the planet for a very short time. Nature has done fine before us and will do fine after us. So all we really need to start thinking about is learn from nature just by watching. Everything has just happened. So carefully watching the world to help gain insights into it and ideas for new ways of doing things. So in terms of the aviation industry, studying how birds fly has helped create airplanes, right? Again, I could go on forever on this, but I think it's so important that we take the time to observe things, right? While we're gaining the skill of questioning and associating things, we need to spend time and observe. And what this may mean for some of us is if you're trying to solve the Houston's hunger problem or food deserts problem, maybe you should go sit at the Houston Food Bank and understand the problem from the ground up. Stand there serving the folks that are collecting the food from you. Spend some time with the people who are directing those programs. Spend some time just observing how the process is happening. And maybe you can make a suggestion that improves the process. And that may be the innovation that was needed for it to be better. So you could make a huge impact by just watching. Okay? So whatever the idea may be, make sure you spend time observing it. And I think the tip I have there is just pick an idea that you admire, that you want to follow. Maybe you want to start a restaurant because you believe Vietnamese food is the healthiest in the world. Cool. Well, go to a Vietnamese food restaurant. Observe how many customers does it take for it to make its day's earnings, and then times that by a month, and then see what does it take to run that business. If you had the expense of a rent and the food and the customers coming in were paying $5, a spring roll, can you do the math to find out what would it take for you? How many customers a day would you need to have so that you could break even and make a profit with the restaurant idea? If it makes money, there's no problem in getting money. You know, people often say, man, I have a great idea, but I need money, and that's why I can't run the idea. No, money is the easiest thing to find, right? The problem is showing the model makes money. Bankers are in the business of lending people money as much as they want because they want to get money in return. If they stop giving you money, then they would be out of business. So money is never the problem. The idea, the person running the idea, and the pace of which when the idea will turn a profit, those are kind of the issues you should need to be thinking about. So if you've got a business idea, then think about actually going to that business or a similar business or what have you, and spending some time observing that business. And it could be that maybe you want to start the next Uber. Well, observe an Uber driver, see how he works or she works, and don't be creepy, but we'll still try to gain as much insight as possible, right? So take that with caution. But check out the next one, right? Then it becomes experimenting. The skill of experimenting. I think it's so important that you spend the first three things building awareness, learning, building a knowledge base of things. So whether you're associating things, observing them, or questioning them, you're building insights. But then you got to test something. You got to take action in it. You got to hypothesize and do something. So when you're ready and you say, okay, this is now, I think I have a model, I want to test it, I want to do something with it, try it on a small case basis. If you do want to start that Vietnamese restaurant, then maybe, and you want to pitch it as a healthier option in places, in Houston that has food deserts, then maybe you make some small boxes and start to offer that I don't want to say the school, but then I get in trouble, but why not? The school. Why don't you set up a table, get some permission, and say, look, I have some experiments I want to do. I want to serve people, get their feedback on the type of food, and our campus sees about 30,000 people per day at this location, what have you. So maybe you just need to set up a table with permission and get a survey, get a feedback, and maybe people will say, man, this is healthy food, but this is not filling. Well, now you know how much quantity you need to sell in order to make it filling. Or maybe they say this is terrible tasting food, and that feedback will tell you that maybe I need to spice it up, become the next halal guys that's got the spiciest sauce in the country, and that's fine. But unless you try it, how would you know that the idea has any merit? Unless you actually experiment, how would you know? So it becomes super critical that we try new things, we think about how to apply it, and then really this Thomas Edison, right? It says, I haven't failed, I just found 10,000 ways that it doesn't work. He's talking about obviously electricity. Thomas Edison is known as the inventor of electricity, but it took him a lot of trials and error and failure often for him to actually make it as that invention. But he didn't say that he's failed 10,000 times. He just found how it doesn't work 10,000 times, and that's so important because if it was easy, then everybody would be doing it, right? There is a barrier of entry to your business model that only you could find a solution for because you've experimented and you've got some insights that no one else has. That becomes your IP, meaning that's your secret sauce that solves the problem. So I think it's important, really the tip there is to explore the world by engaging in new activities, join new professions and others, experiment with yourself, experiment with your idea, get others to buy in and give you and share some thoughts, and really think about doing something with it. Don't just keep it in your head. And often I get asked the question about the IP of a product. So just this yesterday morning, a student called and said, I have a great idea, but I'm worried about somebody stealing it. Okay, so do you have what it takes to register the IP? No, I don't have any funding or anything, I just have an idea. Okay, have you experimented, have you talked with anyone, have you tried it, have you tested it? No, I haven't done any of that. Well, a great idea in your head is useless to you and it's useless to the world. It doesn't make money. It doesn't convert into a model that other people can benefit. It makes no impact. So stop sitting on an idea because you're afraid that others will copy it. In fact, I can tell you, even if you've got a great IP on your idea, our world is so big and so connected that it will be copied anyway. And unless you've got the lawyer power to back it up and go and defend yourself and try to win the IP back and not focus on your company, there's nothing you can do about it. Our legal system still is very behind, and it only becomes a problem for the big companies. For the little guys, it's a myth that, man, if I start talking or building up the idea, someone's going to steal it, and then man, if you don't do anything with it, it doesn't matter. It doesn't go anywhere, right? And if you think about it, everyone's got a lifespan of 80 years and 90 years or what have you. If you don't do anything with it, well, you just be like, man, I wish I had done that, right? So the importance of experimenting and trying, there are ways you can protect yourself, but you got to really get out there, start talking to a mentor, and really think of a way where you could, file like a provisional patent where it's not as expensive. In fact, my office at HCC, we have registered student patents after some of our hackathons. So there are ways, and it doesn't cost $1 million to submit it, right? I mean, that myth. There are simpler things we can do, but if you're just sitting on the idea and not doing anything with it, that's the challenge, right? So be really mindful about that. And then the last tip, networking, meeting people, talking with people, talking with potential customers, users, suppliers, building your network of community, right? I think it's so important that you use school as that ground to network with people. Because outside of school, it becomes really difficult to meet new people of diverse backgrounds. I mean, yes, you can go to a church or a temple and meet new people there, but then you're missing out on the diversity. School is kind of the only place where you're sitting completely at random with another person, right? And it's also at a time in your life when you can say, hi, I'm such and so, and this is my field of study, and I'm interested, and you can talk and build on each other and build a friendship out of it. Outside of school, it becomes the opportunities lesson. It becomes work or place, work and place of worship, or bars or clubs, which often is not the same place, right? For networking for these ideas. So as you're in school, utilize this time to build relationships, build friendships, because some of the best business partners I've had are my buds from high school. People that I know. They may not have the skill, but they have my loyalty, right? So I think it's important you build on that. And then as you never know who's the Zuckerberg in the group that's going to be hired, or who's the manager at this company that needs somebody. So even if it doesn't help you with your idea, it will help you in life in general, just to network, just to make contacts and friends. So the tip, I mean, you know what networking is. Really just going out of the way to meet people with widely different backgrounds and perspectives to extend your knowledge. But then it's just make friends, right? Simple tip. And don't be afraid of people stealing your ideas. Just once you get to know them and you start talking with them and you see their perspective on things, maybe you both can pitch the idea together. So make friends, build on relationships, and then learn to be kind and helpful. I think one of the best advices I've given to high schoolers is if you learn how to be helpful, in order for you to help, you must go back and be knowledgeable on how to help. For example, you see somebody, their tire gets a nail in it, it loses all its air, and you want to help. Okay, well, unless you know how to change a tire, you're not really helpful, right? So if that skill you have, then you can be helpful. So in order to help someone, you must get educated and help before you can help someone. So I think it's important that you learn to be helpful, because if you follow those discovery skills, you will have a lot of know-hows, and you could be helpful. And then being kind is obviously a simpler message. That just means being open to other backgrounds, other thoughts, other thought processes, because I think it helps you network better when you're open to different backgrounds and different people. So if you do those things, I think you would be very innovative. And a recap on the 5 skills is the skill of association, the skill of questioning, observing, experimenting, and networking. Notice the first 3, I break them into building your awareness. The last 2 is inspiring action. Does that make sense? Where you use those, that's more internal to you. Experimenting and networking becomes you to the network. More action-oriented where you're doing something. So if you build awareness, you inspire action, I think you not only would be innovative, but you would be a great entrepreneur for the community. Make sense? All right, so that's all I had. We've had 27 or so people watching us on YouTube, and we ran this for 37 minutes. So what I'm going to do now is, as I mentioned, I'm going to share the pitch competition website. We'll go through really quickly the process, and we'll share, once again, Sam's information at St. Thomas, and the dates once more, just to wrap this up. And then if you have any questions, I know you guys have already asked a lot of questions before the stream started, but if anyone on the stream has any questions, then you could reach out to myself and Sam. So we'll go quickly to the website. So we have 2 websites established. One with St. Thomas, and the other one with HCC. So I'll quickly show the HCC one first, followed by the one at St. Thomas. So hccs.edu/pitch. And the reason I'm showing this one first is this is now our 6th version of the Ideas Pitch Competition. It has grown every semester in some form or fashion. We've made this a citywide competition, and with our friends at St. Thomas, we've really got the opportunity to expand the prize money this year, right? So St. Thomas really is the underwriter here that's running it, and then we're stepping in with the outreach, right? So as you know, it's encouraged for currently enrolled students in the greater Houston area, for high school, colleges, and universities. And then the first prize, there will be 2 first prizes, right? So there will be one in the entrepreneurial track, another one in the social entrepreneurship track. And if you want to learn the difference, there will be a training session on it in the coming weeks, all before the 22nd of April. And then if you go down and if you need help formatting your pitch, in the past we've broken it into like 5 categories. So So find the category that makes sense for you. Is it under education? Is it under technology? Is it under community well-being? Categorize it so it helps us understand how it's being pitched. Also, if you scroll further down, you'll see we've got a little template under judging them. Under student requirements. So maybe you want to think about pitching or writing that essay or writing that presentation that has the problem clearly defined, the solution to that problem that you're proposing, how will you measure it, right? If that's something you've already tested, if you've got something in there. Some optional things that I think would be helpful to know is, have you studied what it would take to do that in terms of, have you studied the cost related to this? Have you studied your unique value proposition? What are you offering that's different? You could also talk about what is your advantage. For example, if you're pitching homelessness and you've been homeless, well, that's your advantage. You can talk about this because you have been homeless, right? So that's an unfair advantage to you for pitching this idea that you have access to. Maybe your idea is you want to teach everyone Chinese because it's taught by a billion people, so 1 in 7 speak Chinese, or maybe you're going to start teaching Chinese to the community. Your unfair advantage may be that you are a native Chinese speaker, right? So it reduces the next guy or girl from doing the same idea if you don't have that advantage. Talk about the channels, and it's not like the TV channels, but it's rather, how will your product get to the user? How will your service be provided to the user? And it may be that you have thought of YouTube, and you're going to start a channel on YouTube where you get inspirational messages out every Monday to your followers. And maybe that's how you start up your idea. Or maybe it's that you are really skilled in something, and you're going to create a YouTube channel and teach people how to do that. And in return, you would get advertising revenue. And that's totally fine. Define those channels. And it may even be that you're going to create art that's meaningful, maybe art that is women empowerment, or it serves a different community, and then you're going to sell that to retailers or give that on a consignment basis to some retailer, and then make money that way. Maybe that's what you're going to provide, is more awareness through art. Maybe that's your skill. But bring that in, talk about it, and also how will you make money. I think it's important that you understand that this is not all about creating something, having huge impact, and then not having any money be generated. I think a good idea should support the people and the purpose, but also the profits. In order to be sustainable, even nonprofits have to generate tremendous amount of revenue to support itself. 8cc is technically a nonprofit, but it has a balanced budget of $370 million a year. And that money has to be collected from the community, right? So it's got a revenue stream from students, from the state, from the local homeowners, right? It's a large institution. It's a nonprofit. We're not interested in making profit, but boy, does it pay to be in this business, right? So it's doing good, but also making a profit. So provide that. And then if you have anything that could be like a visual concept that helps us as selection folks go in and quickly get a better idea about your idea, put that in there. So provide some sort of visual concept. If you have a picture of a product, if you created a new way of bicycling, and you've got a much more relaxed way of biking, show us the product, right? It helps us to know, to help us as a selection committee decide quickly if that idea needs to be presented to our judges. All right, so last but not least is the form itself. It's right on our page, and it's also on the St. Thomas Bold Ideas page. It's the same form. Just got to go fill out all the ones that are required, and submit. And again, in the past, we've not limited to just one entry per person. You can submit up to 3, right? Just keep in mind that only, it may be, in terms of time, if you're selected for 2 tracks at the same time, you can't be in 2 places at the same time, right? So just be mindful that when you're submitting these ideas, both competitions will happen on the same date. Both tracks will be running at the same time, and they will have 5 judges separately for both tracks. So it's not like it's social entrepreneurship track is happening in the morning, and then the business entrepreneurship is happening in the evening. It's all running at the same time, and all within the Cameron School of Business. So be mindful of that. But it doesn't hurt to submit as many entries as possible, hoping that one of them sticks, right? So go for it. Encourage you to submit more than one if you've got more than one. And then once you're finished, wait for, hit the submit button, make sure it goes through. You should also get an email that says, this is what you submitted. The first 2 training sessions, so the first one about idea generation, that one's gone. But the next one is later today here at Central Campus in room 112. You want to, it's behind the building, so if you plan to join us later in the day, make sure you utilize the faculty and the student parking behind the Sanjak building, right on 1300 Holman Street. So HCC Central Campus, room 112, behind the auditorium in the back parking lot is where you would park. So you could find us. But then my contact information, it's listed there. So the phone number 713-718-5269, and my email ravi.brumbat@hccs.edu. So all of that is on the hccs.edu/pitch, and then the St. Thomas website. Again, it's got a very similar setup. In terms of the application, it's the same. So we'll go to sttom.edu/capital B bold dash, now zoom in, you can see it, capital IDES, ideas. So when you do that, you'll go to the St. Thomas website for the competition details, criteria, who's eligible, etc. Here's the form, and then submit. So again, you don't have to submit it at 2 different places. The form is the same. So pick whichever and submit it. It all ends up in the same system once you submit it. So pick one, wherever it is, and submit your idea. Fair enough? Yes, sir.
Can I have a question? You said like 85 to 54, so like essay is only like 5 to 54.
One of the, I think you're, yeah. So you could upload a PDF, a Word document, or a PowerPoint that's not limited by any words. But in order for us to, what we'll do on the day of, if you're asked to be presenting, we're going to have a brief of your idea. So people have, our judges can quickly see what you'll be pitching. So for us to not only have a title, but also a short description that can fit into our slides or our programs, that's what you're doing there. So no, the whole idea is not limited to 50 words. You can upload, and it is required that you upload some presentation that could be of multiple, a lot more than 50 words. But that is a brief that we'll be utilizing to help market you. Okay?
So like in the photo presentation, we can upload like a Word file and a PowerPoint file.
Yes. So this file upload option will accept PDF, Microsoft Word, so .docx files, and then Microsoft PowerPoint, so PPT, PPTX. Those files will be accepted. Okay, that is required. You'll see the red dot there. As far as uploading a picture, a graphic, or a logo, anything else you want us to see, and a website, if you've already established a website, your business is already kind of running, or a YouTube link of you pitching, if you wanted to provide those things to us as part of the selection process, it's not required, but if you submitted it, it would help us better understand what you're doing and pitching. So encourage you to fill out and provide as much detail as possible. But if you don't have as much, still submit what you've got. Okay. Cool. So with that, I'll just put up the flyer and I'll kill the audio on the screen, and then we'll wait for our next competition training later in the day. And thank you all for the opportunity to share our first training. Sam, is there anything you want to add? I should mention at the bottom of the St. Thomas website, if you had any questions, not bottom, I think further up, contact information. Before the training, the application, there is an email address where you could get in touch with the St. Thomas group, and then Sam's name is there as well. So make sure you reach out to us for questions if you have any, but ultimately we're looking for a bunch of ideas. Yes, go ahead.
I have another question about,
Go ahead.
so like when we gonna submit an idea, so how can we know that our idea belongs to entrepreneurship or social entrepreneurship?
Right, so we are working on getting a date with Impact Houston that will tell you the difference between the two. So they have a really cool lecture slash seminar that talks about what is the difference. What is classified as being a social entrepreneur compared to a business entrepreneur. So attend that training. We'll also try to make that live stream, so that way it helps you classify. You can also ask us by contacting us with the idea itself, and we can help you and say, hey, this really classifies as a business. For example, if you're going to create a shoe store in Houston, and you're going to sell Nike shoes, so you're like a retailer, but you're going to give 10% profits away, that actually doesn't classify as a social entrepreneur. Okay, I mean that's a very crafty way of saying, but if you are getting the source of your shoes from a group that is not typically able to sustain itself, so refugees, minorities, or what have you, and there's a story to your product that you're selling those shoes, and it's not offered by the big box stores, then you could pitch that not only is the shoe with the story helping a community sustain itself, but then you're also sharing profits with that community by just buying the shoes from them. You're not actually as an expense for you, but you're not donating it to them. They've actually earned their way to it, right? So you're helping a community that makes these shoes. Now you're selling these shoes. Now that could very well be sort of a social entrepreneur. And you set up the model, you set up the business, and then you as an individual walk away from it. That's totally fine. As long as the model is running and is doing what it's supposed to do, you've enabled somebody else, that can be classified, right? So just run it by us. Send it to call us, email us, and then just ask us if you're confused about the process, or just attend that workshop with Shiroy Aspender and Grace Rodriguez. I think they will really help us differentiate the two. And the group is Impact Houston. You can go to the website as well for the training session details as they come, as we schedule them out. Okay? All right, so I'm going to kill the audio, and then any other questions, we'll just take it here. Thanks again for joining the stream. It looked like we had 31 folks watching us at the peak. So we appreciate that.